I had no intention of going to my high school reunion. In fact, I wanted to stay home and sleep, but it was my husband, David, who kept pushing me to get out. He said I was spending too much time indoors and needed to socialize more. He kept mentioning the reunion, encouraging me to attend, and eventually he convinced me. He marked it on our calendar, helped me pick out an outfit, and it wasn't long before I was ready. I had worked from home for so long that I had stopped going to social events, and David's gentle nudging was the push I needed. Still, I felt hesitant, unsure whether I should even go. The moment I arrived at the venue, it felt like all eyes were on me. I tried to blend in, but it didn't take long for people to start approaching me, chatting me up. It was overwhelming. Half the guys were hitting on me, and the others were eyeing me like I was some kind of trophy. It got exhausting fast, so I excused myself and went to the bar for a drink alone. That's when I heard someone call my name. It was Liam, my first love. I hadn't seen him in years, and the last I'd heard, he wasn't even in the country. Seeing him there took me by surprise, and suddenly I felt alive again. We hugged each other, catching up like old friends. He asked if I was with anyone, and I told him I wasn't. He smiled and offered to get me a drink, which I quickly accepted. He returned with whiskey, and we started chatting more. Then, out of nowhere, he asked me if I was happy. I didn't quite understand the question at first, so he rephrased it. He wanted to know if I was truly satisfied with the life I was living. I told him I had a husband, a child, a good job, and a house, but he laughed and said that wasn't the answer he was looking for. We continued talking, reminiscing about the past, and before I knew it, he suggested we go somewhere quieter. The hall was noisy, and he wanted to get away from the crowd. I agreed, and he led me to the elevator. He had a hotel room in the same building where the reunion was held, and we went up in his room. He offered me more whiskey, and we kept talking. He apologized for the way things ended between us years ago, but I told him it didn't matter anymore. He had disappeared without a word after our final exams, not even showing up to prom. I laughed it off. Then, unexpectedly, he asked if my husband made me happier than he did. I should have shut it down right away, but for some reason I didn't. It was like I was allowing him to poke at the cracks in my marriage, and to be honest, I had grown bored with it. My life had become routine and tiring. I tried to explain that we were teenagers when Liam and I were together, that I couldn't compare those emotions to my current situation. But before I could finish, he kissed me. I froze, but then he pulled back, apologizing. He told me he couldn't resist, that I was so beautiful and attractive. His words made me feel good, and without thinking, I leaned in and kissed him back. We kissed for a while, and the playful banter between us started to flow. He told me he had never stopped thinking about me, that I'd always have a special place in his heart. Things quickly escalated from there, and we spent the night together. It was thrilling in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. But when I woke up the next morning, reality hit me. What had I done? I felt a wave of panic rush over me. I quickly gathered my clothes, not wanting to wake him or deal with any awkward conversations. It was a one-time thing. It had felt incredible, but that was it. I turned off my phone the night before, so when I got into the taxi to head home, I asked the driver if he had a charger. Luckily, he did, and I plugged my phone in. As I checked my phone, I realized it was my child's birthday, and I had completely forgotten about picking up the birthday cake. I was disoriented, feeling like my whole world was about to collapse. Then, a message from David popped up. I hope he was worth it. The locks are changed. Don't even think about coming back, because you don't have a home anymore. My heart dropped. How did David know? I was filled with confusion and panic. I didn't know what to think or say, but I needed to get home quickly. I told the driver to speed up, needing to get there as fast as possible. When I arrived, I ran to the door, but it wouldn't open. I knocked, but there was no answer. I looked through the window and saw David sitting at the dining table, his phone in front of him, sipping coffee from his favorite mug. I knocked on the window and called his name, but he didn't respond. I could see his phone ringing on the table, and yet he didn't even glance at it. It was like he was pretending not to hear me. I kept knocking, growing more desperate, and finally, I threatened to break the window. Still, he didn't answer. He just stood up and walked upstairs. I couldn't believe it. I stood there on the porch, my heart breaking as I cried. One night of weakness had ruined everything. Just as I was crying, I got another message. I received a message on my phone from Liam saying that last night was amazing and that we should talk. My first reaction was pure anger, and I almost deleted the text, but something stopped me. Liam and I had never exchanged numbers. So how in the world did he have mine? I sat there, confused and frustrated, when suddenly my husband unlocked the door and threw my bags outside. He had packed all my clothes. I was stunned, and before I could even process it, I told him to stop acting like a child and to talk to me like an adult. He looked at me, his face full of anger, like he was about to hit me. But he didn't. He was about to walk back inside, but I stopped him, grabbing the side of his shirt, and told him not to walk away. I asked him what was going on, why was he sending me weird texts, and why was he throwing my things out? Was this some kind of joke? He laughed bitterly and called me a good pretender. He said he'd been worried I'd be alone at the reunion. So he'd sent our son to his sister's house and came to the event himself. My stomach sank. He told me he saw Liam and me leave the hall, enter the elevator, and go up to a floor. He followed us and watched us walking hand in hand down a corridor, laughing and looking like we had all the time in the world. He said we entered a hotel room, and that's when his heart broke. He asked himself what he had done to deserve this, but soon realized it wasn't about him. It was all on me. He called me ungrateful, an evil which who bit the hand that fed her. I couldn't take the insults. I was horrified by being caught, but the way he was talking to me, as if I'd ruined everything in a single moment, felt so much worse. I grabbed his hand and tried to tell him he was overreacting, that he was just assuming things based on seeing us walk into a private room, but he was having none of it. He looked at me, furious, and said I still had the nerve to deny the truth, that I was lying to his face. Then he told me he didn't want to argue anymore and ordered me off his porch. I couldn't even get another word in before he slammed the door and locked it behind him. I was beyond frustrated, feeling stuck with nowhere to go. My only options were my friend's place, my sister-in-law's house, or my brother's place. I couldn't go to my sister-in-law's house, so I decided to go to my brother's. It was about a 20-minute drive away. When I knocked, he opened the door immediately, and instead of asking what had happened, he burst out laughing. That was just how he was. He made jokes out of everything, but I wasn't in the mood for jokes. I walked past him and sat down on the couch, telling him I needed food. He just told me to go to the kitchen and get something myself. As I was scrolling through my phone, I got another message from Liam. He asked if he had been that bad in bed the night before, wondering if that's why I wasn't responding. That wasn't the problem at all. Liam had satisfied me in ways my husband never could. I was caught up in this mess, and he had no idea what was going on. As I read the message, my brother grabbed my phone and read it himself. He looked at me in disbelief, his joking attitude turning into something more serious and disappointed. He asked how I could do this to my husband. I didn't want to deal with his judgment, so I begged him not to tell our parents, but he wouldn't make any promises. He just walked away and went into his room. I sat there for what felt like forever, trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. How could I convince my husband nothing had happened? Then another message from Liam popped up. This time, he was demanding to know why I was ignoring him. I didn't respond, but then came another message, just my name followed by exclamation marks, as though he was yelling at me. I finally replied, telling him to leave me alone. The response came quickly, but this time it was a video. It was a video of Liam and me sleeping together the night before. He had recorded us without my knowledge. I immediately called him, and he picked up laughing. He said he thought I had lost my ability to answer texts and was surprised I was calling him. I was furious, asking him if he had completely lost his mind. He said he just needed to get my attention, and if I didn't meet him again, he'd send the video to my husband in our high school group chat. I felt sick. I was so heartbroken, realizing I'd ruined my marriage for someone who would blackmail me. I asked him how he could do this to me, and he just said he wanted me. I'd never felt so betrayed. I told him I would do whatever he wanted. And then I ended the call. It was still my son's birthday, and I didn't want to miss it. So I went to get the cake and headed over to my husband's sister's house to see my son. When I arrived, my son was so happy to have his cake, but my husband showed up shortly after. When he saw me there, he was furious. He asked what I was doing there, and though he didn't want to argue in front of our son, he pulled me outside and we started to argue. He told me I was no longer welcome in his life and that I needed to stay away from our son. That's when I lost it. I yelled at him, accusing him of being insecure and letting his fragile ego get in the way of everything. He went quiet for a moment and then asked me to swear on our child's life that I hadn't cheated on him with Liam. I stood firm, swearing that nothing happened, that I was innocent. He stared at me for a long time, and I think my strong denial made him start to believe me. But before anything else could be said, his phone chimed. He looked at it for longer than seemed normal, and his expression changed to one of frowning confusion. I was getting impatient and said, "We're having a serious conversation, and you're more focused on your phone than me." I was about to walk back into the house, but he blocked me and showed me something on his phone. I was in shock when I saw the video, me and Liam together, asleep. It was a video he had sent to my husband. I almost collapsed from the weight of it all. My husband looked at me with disbelief and reminded me that I had sworn on our child's life. Yet I had lied. He told me he didn't want to see me again, and before I could say a word, he turned and walked into the house, slamming the door behind him. I was frozen. The only thing I could do was deny everything, but now with the video exposed, there was no escaping the truth. I stood there, tears welling up because I didn't know what else to do. After a few moments of standing there, feeling completely lost, I rushed to the hotel where Liam was staying. I banged on his door like I was ready to tear it down. When he opened it, he was smiling as if he'd gotten exactly what he wanted. I demanded to know why he had sent the video to my husband, and he told me that he couldn't reach me and thought I had blocked him. So he figured he'd go ahead and send it. All I could do was yell at him, telling him my phone had been off. His only response was a casual, "Oops." I felt my anger boiling over. I promised I wouldn't let him get away with this, but he just laughed and told me there was no point in trying to fix my marriage. It was already beyond saving. He told me to come with him, that we could start over. I couldn't believe the man he had become. He was no longer the person I had known in high school, the person I once loved. I told him he was delusional and walked away from him without a second thought. When I returned to my brother's house, I was shocked to find my parents there waiting. It felt like a meeting I had no knowledge of. My father angrily confronted me, asking what he had ever done wrong to deserve the embarrassment I had caused our family. I knew exactly what he meant, so I looked to my brother, expecting him to have told him about my infidelity, but he hadn't. It turned out Liam had posted the video in our high school group chat, and someone had forwarded it to my sister, who then went straight to my parents with it. My mother was speechless, unable to say anything, while my father raged at me. I tried to explain, telling them it was a mistake. Just one mistake. I begged them to understand that I had been a perfect wife and daughter, but now they were treating me like a criminal for one wrong decision. My father shook his head, saying I wasn't showing enough remorse. He just got up and walked into the kitchen, leaving me standing there. I turned to my mother, hoping she would say something, anything, but she said nothing. Even my sister, who I had always leaned on, looked at me with disgust. I called her a snake before I left the house. I didn't know where to go. My phone was still off, and my mind was racing with confusion. I ended up at a friend's house, staying there for the time being. Within days, it felt like the whole world knew what I had done. The shame was unbearable, and I was terrified to even go to work, knowing everyone there would have heard the story. When I finally went to work, I saw my husband leaving the building. I tried to talk to him, but he ignored me completely, simply tossing an envelope at me. Without a word, he climbed into his car and drove off. I opened the envelope to find divorce papers. My heart sank as I realized it was over. When I got to my office, my boss called me into his office. I had barely taken my seat before he told me to pack up my things. He said I was fired. My boss was my husband's cousin, and I knew right away that this was another way my husband was making sure I paid for what I had done. My life felt like it was spiraling out of control. In a single morning, I had lost both my marriage and my job. 7 months have passed since that day, and it feels like nothing has gotten better. The divorce was finalized quickly, and my husband was awarded full custody of our child. He used my mistake as evidence that I was an unfit mother, claiming that our child should have no access to digital devices or the internet for fear someone might find a video. The court agreed with him, and I lost the battle for custody. I was only allowed supervised visits. What made things worse was how my family and friends turned their backs on me. I became a pariah, someone to avoid at all costs. Even my own parents couldn't bring themselves to speak to me. My life was filled with loneliness, and I couldn't help but feel that I had lost everything. I had seen my ex-husband out with another woman, walking with our child in tow, their hands intertwined as they laughed and smiled. It was like nothing mattered to him anymore. Like all the years we spent together had meant nothing. I couldn't handle seeing him move on so quickly. Now I work as a cashier at a supermarket. It's not easy, and it took me a long time to even get hired, but the owner gave me a chance. That didn't stop my ex-husband from rubbing his new relationship in my face. Though, he would come into the store with his girlfriend, both of them acting as if they were trying to show me just how happy they were together. Every time I saw them, it felt like a reminder of what I had lost. I finally took off my wedding ring a few days ago. I didn't want to believe I had lost everything, that there was no hope left. But now I know that it's true. I haven't heard from Liam since everything came to light. I thought about pressing charges against him, but I can't even afford to do that. I'm just angry. So angry that my life turned out this way. If only my husband hadn't forced me to go to that reunion. None of this would have.